Salams and welcome. Thank you for joining part 16, which I think is a conclusion of the lecture talk by Mawlana Siddiqui in Tokyo, right? This is part of the Dimensions of Islam by the roving ambassador of Islam, Mawlana Abdul Aleem Siddiqui Rahmatullahi al-Qadiri. And thanks goes to Sheikh Abdul Hadi al-Qadiri, the president of the Imam Ahmad Rida Academy. Please get copies of this book, wonderful book, 2-volume book, The Dimensions of Islam. Right, so let's continue with this, and we're looking at the cultivation of science by the Muslims. Fabulous lecture that Mawlana Siddiq gave at the Oriental Culture Society in Tokyo in Japan. And Mawlana Siddiqui continues. The astronomical treatise Al-Qanun, we under the subject of astronomy. The astronomical treatise of Al-Qanun al-Masudi, written by the master thinker Al-Bayruni, whose work in numerous branches of learning has drawn high praise from scholars of all nations, is a monument of learning and research. The astronomical observations conducted by a body of savants with Umar Khayyam and Abdurrahman al-Hazani at the head led to the reform for the calendar, which preceded the Gregorian by 600 years and is said by a competent authority to be even more exact. The era which is introduced upon these observations was named after Malik Shah the Jalalain. Ulugh Beg, the son of the mighty Emperor Timur, was an astronomer of high rank and presided at the observations which have immortalized his name. Ulugh Beg is separated by only a century and a half from Kepler. The world of Islam has produced a galaxy of illustrious astronomers whose epoch-making discoveries have immortalized their names in the history of progress, and the Arabic names which the stars of the larger magnitudes still bear on the celestial globes shall always continue to remind students of astronomy of the genius of Muslim astronomers. It is impossible at this occasion to review at some length the researches of Muslim astronomers. Only a very brief survey is possible. Mawlana Siddiqui continues and says, MashaAllah and Ahmad al-Nahavandi were the inaugurators of astronomy among the Arabs. MashaAllah, the phoenix of his time. I thought it was MashaAllah, but it's MashaAllah is a person's name, or maybe it's MashaAllah, I don't know, MashaAllah or MashaAllah. The phoenix of his time, according to Abu Faraj, wrote several treatises on the astrolabe and armillary sphere and the nature and movement of celestial bodies, works which still evoke the admiration of scientists. Al-Nahavandi corrected several Hindu and Greek notions in his astronomical table called Al-Mustamal. Say Ibn Ali, Yahya ibn Abu Mansur, and Khalid ibn Abdul Malik made extremely valuable observations in connection with the equinoxes, the eclipses, the apparitions of the comets, and other celestial phenomena. Al-Khwarizmi translated Siddhanta, the Book of Indian Tables, and added it to his own personal observations. Furthermore, the encyclopedist Al-Kindi was the author of more than 200 works on diverse subjects, a magnificent polymath, wrote numerous treatises on astronomy which are valuable to the extreme. Abu Mashar, corrupted by the Europe of the Middle Ages into Abu Mazar, made the celestial phenomenon his special study, and the Azij Abi Mashar on the table of Abu Mashar has always remained one of the chief sources of astronomical knowledge. The discoveries and observations of the three brothers, Muhammad, Ahmad, and Hassan, relating to the evaluations of the mean movements of the sun and other astral bodies, the obliquity of the ecliptic, the variations of the lunar altitudes, the precession of the equinoxes, and the movements of the solar apogee bear testimony to the genius of Muslim scientists. Alhamdulillah, absolutely magnificent. The astronomical tables of Al-Batani, the introducer of sine and cosine instead of the chord in astronomical and trigonometrical calculations, were translated into Latin and furnished for many centuries the groundwork of astronomy in Europe. Ali ibn Amajur and Abul Hassan Ali ibn Amjur are famous for the calculations of the lunar. The Amir Ali says, the first observatory in Europe built by the Arabs, the Giralda or Tower of Seville was erected under the superintendent of the great mathematician Jabir ibn Afia in 1190 AC for the observation of the heavens. Its fate was not a little characteristic. After the expulsion of the Moors, it was turned into a belfry, the Spaniards not knowing what else to do with it. The Arabian astronomers, says Draper, also devoted themselves to the construction and perfection of astronomical instruments, to the measurement of time by clocks of various kinds, by clepsydras and sundials. They were the first to introduce for this purpose the use of the pendulum. To the Muslim goes also the credit of the revolutionizing invention of the telescope. Its inventor, Abul Hassan, describes it as a tube to the extremities of which were attached two diopters. It was further improved by Abul Hassan's Muslim successors and used with great success in the observatories of Maragha and Cairo. Alhamdulillah, when I was young, when I was studying astronomy, I had my own telescope. And one of the best things, besides the planetarium, I spent many hours in the planetarium. If you have a telescope, you look at the moon, just look at the moon. You see the craters on the moon, you see the ridges. The moon looks so absolutely beautiful. Even if you look through your binoculars, and then Alhamdulillah, I've seen the rings of Saturn through my telescope. I've seen the Jupiter and the moons of Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, absolutely magnificent. Right, so let's continue with Mawlana Siddiqui. I hope it will not be out of place to refer briefly here to what might be called applied science. The effects of the scientific activity are plainly perceived in the great improvements that took place in many of the industrial arts. Agriculture shows it in better methods of irrigation, the skillful employment of manures, the raising of improved breeds of cattle, the enactment of wise codes of rural laws, the introduction of the culture of rice, and that of sugar and coffee. The manufacturers show it in the great extension of the industries of silk, cotton, and wool, in the fabrication of Cordoba and Morocco, leather and paper, in mining, casting, and various metallurgic operations, in the making of Toledo blades. The invention of the mariner's compass and the introduction of navigation charts was also the product of the same scientific spirit, and made Muslims the masters of the sea. The intellectual upheaval created by Islam was a gigantic one. There is not a single department of learning which the Muslim scholars have left untouched, and in which they have not carved out a high position for themselves. At this occasion, I have confined myself to some important exact sciences. The Muslim contribution to normative studies, to normative sciences, philosophy, art, and literature, which is as great and in some cases even greater, has been totally left out. And Mawlana Siddiqui then concludes, he says, ladies and gentlemen, now he's come to the end of his talk, but when I look through this, it seems like we still got some way to go. So his conclusion also takes some time. So join me in the next episode for the concluding part of the magnificent speech by Mawlana Siddiqui in Tokyo. Alhamdulillah, stay well, look after yourself. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.